Did you know the United States contains a point where you can stand in 4 states simultaneously, and that point is in the wrong location and has been legally wrong for 156 years? Or that one American state is closer to Africa than it is to the western edge of its own country? How about the fact that the contiguous United States has a piece of land that belongs to one state but is only accessible by driving through 2 others, created by an earthquake that made a river run backward for 3 days? Every fact on this list sounds like a trick question. None of them are. Today, we're going through 50 US geography facts so crazy, they'll change how you see the states. And by the end, the map you think you know will look completely different. Fact 50. Maine is the closest US state to Africa. Maine's easternmost point at West Quoddy Head sits closer to the African continent than any other piece of the contiguous United States. The distance from West Quoddy Head to El Bedouza, Morocco, is approximately 3,154 miles. The distance from the western edge of the contiguous United States at Cape Flattery, Washington, to West Quoddy Head is approximately 2,800 miles. Maine is closer to Africa than it is to the other side of the country it belongs to. Americans consistently imagine Europe and Africa as distant and the other American states as close. The map disagrees. Fact 49. Alaska is simultaneously the northernmost, westernmost, and easternmost state. Alaska's Aleutian Islands extend so far west across the Pacific that they cross the 181st meridian and enter the eastern hemisphere, making Alaska technically the easternmost state in the Union, as well as the westernmost and northernmost. The Semi-Sopochnoi Island in the Aleutians sits east of the 181st meridian, placing it in the same longitudinal half of the Earth as New York and London. Alaska occupies 3 of the 4 cardinal geographic extremes of the United States simultaneously. No other state is remotely competitive. Fact 48. You can drive from the Atlantic to the Pacific without crossing a time zone. If you drive from El Paso, Texas to San Diego, California, both cities are in the Mountain and Pacific time zones respectively, but there exist routing options through the Southwest that minimize time zone crossings in ways that distort the intuitive understanding of how time zones map onto geography. More strikingly, Arizona does not observe daylight saving time, meaning for half the year, Arizona is on the same time as California, and for the other half, it is on mountain time, creating a situation where the time zone you are in while driving through Arizona depends on what month it is rather than where you are geographically. Fact 47. The Mississippi River flows uphill in one sense. The Mississippi River Delta at New Orleans sits at sea level, while the river's source at Lake Itasca, Minnesota sits at 1,475 feet above sea level. Water flows downhill, which is normal. What is not intuitive is that the Mississippi River flows from Minnesota to Louisiana in a journey of 2,340 miles to descend 1,475 feet, an average drop of less than 8 inches per mile. The river is so nearly flat that it has historically been prone to switching its lower course entirely, something the Army Corps of Engineers has been spending billions of dollars preventing for decades by maintaining the current channel against the river's preference for a shorter route to the Gulf. Fact 46. Hawaii is moving toward Alaska. The Pacific Plate, on which the Hawaiian Islands sit, is moving northwest at approximately 2.5 inches per year toward the Aleutian Trench, where it is being subducted beneath the North American plate. Hawaii is geologically moving toward Alaska at about the speed your fingernails grow. In 50 million years, Hawaii will be where the Aleutian Islands are today. The youngest island in the Hawaiian chain, the Big Island, sits above the hotspot that created all the Hawaiian Islands in sequence as the plate moved over it, and a new island called Loihi is currently forming underwater to the southeast of the Big Island, the next in the sequence that will eventually be Hawaii's youngest island. Hawaii is moving, and the next Hawaii is already being built. Fact 45. The entire state of Rhode Island could fit inside a single Texas ranch.
The King Ranch in Texas covers 825,000 acres, or approximately 1,289 square miles. Rhode Island covers 1,214 square miles. The King Ranch is larger than Rhode Island. A single privately owned cattle ranch in South Texas is bigger than the entire smallest state in America. This fact requires no embellishment and resists it. A ranch is bigger than a state. Fact 44. Virginia has territory that can only be reached from Maryland. The town of Colonial Beach in Virginia sits on a peninsula in the Potomac River, accessible by land only through Maryland because the Potomac River's Virginia shore in that area is separated from the rest of Virginia by geography in a way that makes Maryland the practical access route. More significantly, the Potomac River itself belongs entirely to Maryland up to the Virginia shore, meaning Virginia has riverfront on a river it does not own, to a shore it technically holds but accesses through a neighboring state. The Potomac's entire surface is Maryland water touching Virginia land. Fact 43. The Continental Divide passes through a lake. In Glacier National Park, Montana, the Continental Divide passes through Triple Divide Peak, from which water flows to 3 different oceans. Rain falling on the peak's west side flows to the Pacific Ocean via the Columbia River system. Rain falling on the east side flows to the Atlantic Ocean via the Gulf of Mexico through the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. Rain falling on the north side flows to the Arctic Ocean via Hudson Bay and the Saskatchewan River system. A single mountain peak in Montana is the hydrological apex of 3 oceans. Water decides which ocean it belongs to based on which side of a single mountain it falls on. Fact 42. New York City is further south than Rome. New York City sits at approximately 40.7 degrees north latitude. Rome, Italy, sits at 41.9 degrees north latitude. New York is approximately 85 miles further south than Rome, a fact that collides directly with the common perception of Europe as warmer and more Mediterranean than the northeastern United States. The reason Rome has a milder climate is the Gulf Stream's warming of the European Atlantic coast and the Mediterranean Sea's thermal mass, not latitude. By latitude alone, New York should have Rome's climate. It doesn't because the ocean currents disagree. Fact 41. The largest national forest in the contiguous US is in Texas. The Sabine National Forest, combined with the other 3 national forests in East Texas that together form the Texas National Forests, is frequently overlooked in comparisons of national forest size because Texas is not associated with forest in the popular imagination. But the larger point is that the Tongass National Forest in Alaska, at 16.7 million acres, is the largest national forest in the United States by a margin so large it is almost unfair. The Tongass is larger than the state of West Virginia. It covers more ground than Switzerland. The largest national forest in America is in a state so vast that the forest fits inside it without defining it. Fact 40. Florida extends further west than any other Atlantic coast state. The western tip of the Florida Panhandle, near Pensacola, sits at approximately 87.5 degrees west longitude, further west than all of Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, significant portions of Illinois, and further west than any point in any other state that borders the Atlantic Ocean. Florida is an Atlantic coast state that extends into the Central Time Zone, further west than states most people consider Midwestern. The shape of Florida's panhandle makes geographic intuition about it systematically wrong. Fact 39. The United States has a longer coastline than any country except Canada and Norway. The total U.S. coastline, including Alaska, Hawaii, and the contiguous states, runs to approximately 95,471 miles of tidal shoreline. This places the United States third globally, behind Canada, whose Arctic archipelago coastline runs to 125,567 miles, and Norway, whose fjord-fractured coast produces 63,000 miles in a country the size of New Mexico. The contiguous U.S. alone has 53,677 miles of tidal shoreline, more coastal contact with the ocean than Brazil, Russia, China, or Australia, despite being smaller than all 4. Fact 38.
There is a town in Nebraska that is the geographic center of the contiguous US, and it's wrong. The commonly cited geographic center of the contiguous United States is near Lebanon, Kansas, marked by a stone monument in a field. But different mathematical methods for calculating the center of a polygon produce different results. And the center of population, the center of gravity of where Americans actually live, is in a different location entirely and moves westward with every census. The geographic center is a mathematical construct that depends on how you define center, and the definition used for the Lebanon marker is not the only defensible one. The center of America is in Kansas if you accept the math, and somewhere else if you use different math. Fact 37. Point Roberts, Washington can only be reached from the US by sea or by driving through Canada. Point Roberts is a small peninsula of Washington state that extends south of the 49th parallel border with Canada, creating a piece of American territory accessible from the rest of the United States only by driving through British Columbia, Canada, and re-entering the US or by boat. Approximately 1,300 people live there. Children in Point Roberts who attend high school must cross an international border twice daily to reach school in Blaine, Washington. The post office there is American. The electricity comes from Canada. Point Roberts exists as a consequence of the 1846 boundary being drawn as a straight line at the 49th parallel, without examining whether that line would cut off peninsulas. Fact 36. Lake Superior contains enough water to flood all of North and South America under 1 foot of water. Lake Superior holds approximately 2,900 cubic miles of water, the largest volume of fresh water in a single lake in the world by surface area, and the third largest by volume. Spread across the combined land area of North and South America, that water would cover both continents with approximately 1 foot of standing water. Lake Superior is so large that it creates its own regional weather patterns, produces waves large enough to sink Great Lakes freighters, and moderated temperatures on its shores enough to support apple orchards in the same latitude where much of Canada is boreal forest. Lake Superior is not a lake in the intuitive sense. It is an inland freshwater sea that happens to have a name suggesting modesty. Fact 35. The US-Canada border is the world's longest international boundary. The border between the United States and Canada runs 5,525 miles, including the Alaska-Canada border, making it the longest international boundary between two countries on Earth. The most famous section, the 49th parallel west of the Great Lakes, is the longest straight international border in the world at approximately 1,260 miles, marked by a 20-foot cleared swath through forest maintained by both countries. Two countries sharing the longest border on Earth have never fought a war with each other across it, a fact geopolitical historians note as unusual for neighbors who share that length of contact. Fact 34. Kentucky has more navigable miles of waterway than any state except Alaska. Kentucky's network of rivers, including the Ohio, Cumberland, Tennessee, Kentucky, Green, and Licking rivers, plus their tributaries, produces more miles of navigable waterway than any state in the lower 48. This fact surprises people who associate navigable waterway density with coastal states or states containing the largest rivers. Kentucky is landlocked and contains more usable river miles than California, Louisiana, or Florida. The Ohio River alone forms Kentucky's entire northern border in a 664-mile stretch of navigable water that connects the state to the Mississippi River system and through it to the Gulf of Mexico. Fact 33. The lowest point in the Western Hemisphere and the highest point in the contiguous US are in the same state. California contains both Badwater Basin in Death Valley at 282 feet below sea level, the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, and Mount Whitney at 14,505 feet above sea level, the highest point in the contiguous United States. The 2 points are 84.6 miles apart and are visible from each other on clear days. The full vertical range between them, 14,787 feet, can be experienced in a single day's drive. No other state on Earth contains both the lowest and highest points of its continental region within such a compact geography.
Fact 32. The Mississippi River is not the longest river in the U.S. The Missouri River is longer. The Missouri runs 2,341 miles from its headwaters in Montana to its confluence with the Mississippi near St. Louis. The Mississippi runs 2,340 miles from Lake Itasca, Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. The Missouri is 1 mile longer, a margin so slim it has been disputed repeatedly as surveys have refined the measurements of both rivers. The Missouri-Mississippi combined system runs 3,710 miles from the Missouri source to the Gulf, making it the fourth longest river system in the world. Americans consistently name the Mississippi as the longest American river because it is the most famous, not because it is the longest. Fact 31. The Grand Canyon is not the deepest canyon in the U.S. Hell's Canyon on the Snake River between Idaho and Oregon reaches 7,993 feet from canyon rim to river, over 1,000 feet deeper than the Grand Canyon's maximum depth of approximately 6,093 feet. Hell's Canyon is also longer, at 125 miles, compared to the Grand Canyon's 277 miles of river length, though not as wide. The Grand Canyon is more famous, more visited, and more photographed. Hell's Canyon is deeper. The deepest canyon in the United States is not in Arizona and does not have a national park named after it. Fact 30. Virginia and West Virginia together were one state until 1863. West Virginia was created during the Civil War when the western counties of Virginia refused to secede from the Union and eventually petitioned for and received statehood as a separate entity in 1863. The constitutional legality of this has never been definitively resolved, since the Constitution requires a state's consent to be divided, and Virginia, having seceded, was not in a legal position either to consent or to object. West Virginia is the only state created by seceding from another state, and it exists in a constitutional gray area that the end of the war made moot before anyone had to fully resolve it. Fact 29. The U.S. purchases land from other countries still within living memory. The United States Virgin Islands were purchased from Denmark in 1917 for $25 million in gold, the most recent territorial purchase in American history. The purchase was motivated by strategic concerns about Germany acquiring Danish territory during World War I and gaining a Caribbean naval base. The islands had been Danish since the 17th century, and the residents' citizenship changed from Danish to American by the terms of the purchase without a vote by the residents of the islands. The most recent addition to American territory was bought rather than settled, conquered, or organized from existing territory, and it happened in the 20th century within the lifetime of people still alive. Fact 28. The U.S. state with the most shoreline is not Florida, California, or Hawaii. Alaska has approximately 33,904 miles of shoreline, more than all other 49 states combined. Florida, commonly assumed to be the most coastline-rich state due to its peninsula geography, has approximately 8,436 miles. California has 3,427 miles. Hawaii has 750 miles. Alaska's coastline exceeds all of these because its southeastern archipelago, the Aleutian Island chain, and its Arctic coast produce a fractal complexity of bays, inlets, and island shores that no other American coastline approaches. Alaska has roughly 4 times Florida's coastline in a state that most Americans associate with interior wilderness rather than coast. Fact 27. The entire New England region is smaller than Montana. The 6 New England states, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, combined cover approximately 71,992 square miles. Montana covers 147,040 square miles. A single western state is more than twice the size of the entire culturally and historically distinct region that Americans most associate with the founding of the country. Montana could contain New England twice and still have room for Connecticut. This size disparity is known, but rarely felt until the numbers are presented together. Fact 26. Lake Michigan is the only Great Lake entirely within the United States. Lakes Superior, Huron, Erie, and Ontario are all shared between the United States and Canada, bisected by the international border. Lake Michigan is entirely within U.S. territory, bordered only by Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. It is the third largest of the Great Lakes by surface area and the sixth largest freshwater lake in the world. Lake Michigan is also the only Great Lake that connects directly to Lake Huron through the Straits of Mackinac, making them technically a single hydrological system at the same surface elevation. The United States has exclusive national ownership of an inland sea the size of West Virginia.
Fact 25. One American city is further south than any point in the contiguous U.S. closest to it. Miami, Florida sits at 25.8 degrees north latitude, further south than the Sahara Desert's northern edge, and south of the Tropic of Cancer, which crosses at 23.5 degrees north. The Florida Keys extend even further south, with Key West at 24.5 degrees north, placing it at the same latitude as the southern edge of the Arabian Desert, the northern coast of India, and the middle of the Sahara. Key West is in the tropics by astronomical definition. When Americans think of tropical destinations, they think of the Caribbean. Key West is at the same latitude as the Caribbean destinations they fly to from Miami. Fact 24. The Rio Grande is shrinking. The Rio Grande forms 1,254 miles of the U.S.-Mexico border, and in its lower reaches in Texas, now regularly fails to reach the Gulf of Mexico. The river runs out of water before it reaches its destination, ending in a sandbar miles from the Gulf in dry years, because agricultural irrigation diversions in New Mexico and Colorado remove so much of the river's flow that nothing reaches South Texas. The international boundary between the United States and Mexico in that region is a river that periodically does not exist. The border is maintained by treaty on the assumption that the river is there. The river sometimes isn't. Fact 23. The U.S. has more tornadoes than the rest of the world combined. The United States experiences approximately 1,200 tornadoes per year, more than all other countries in the world combined. The entire rest of the planet produces roughly 800 to 1,000 tornadoes annually. The geographic reason is the unique collision in the central United States of dry Arctic air from Canada, warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico, and the absence of any east-west mountain range to prevent their meeting, a combination that exists nowhere else on Earth at the same scale. Tornado Alley is not a meteorological quirk. It is the product of a continental geography specifically configured to produce violent atmospheric collisions. Fact 22. The United States has active volcanoes in 3 separate regions. American volcanoes exist in Alaska's Aleutian chain, which contains 52 volcanoes that have been active in the last 300 years. In Hawaii, where active eruption from Kilauea has been essentially continuous since 1983, and in the Cascade Range of the Pacific Northwest, where Mount St. Helens erupted catastrophically in 1980, killing 57 people, and where Mount Rainier is classified as one of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth due to its proximity to the Seattle-Tacoma metropolitan area and the lahar risk it poses. 3 distinct volcanic systems in 3 different geological settings, all within American territory, all currently considered active by USGS monitoring criteria. Fact 21. The geographic center of North America is in North Dakota. A marker near Rugby, North Dakota, designates the calculated midpoint of the entire North American continent, the point equidistant from the continental extremities in all directions when the calculation accounts for the full shape of the continent from Panama to the Arctic Ocean and from Newfoundland to the Pacific coast. The center of a continent containing 23 countries and 580 million people is a small city in the Great Plains of North Dakota that most people drive through without stopping. The center of North America is in a state that most North Americans have never visited. Fact 20. The United States contains the world's largest freshwater lake by surface area and the world's largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere. Lake Superior is the largest freshwater lake in the world by surface area at 31,700 square miles. The Great Salt Lake in Utah is the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere, though it has been shrinking dramatically and its exact size varies significantly with precipitation. Both extreme water bodies are within the same country, in the same nation that also contains Crater Lake, the deepest lake in the US, and Lake Tahoe, the largest alpine lake in North America. America's geographic extremes in freshwater accumulation span the continent and the size scale simultaneously.
Fact 19. Some American land is further from the nearest city than the most remote wilderness in the lower 48. The Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana contains a point approximately 25 miles from the nearest road, which is the most road-remote point in the contiguous United States. But the measurement changes dramatically if you substitute nearest city for nearest road. By that measure, remote points in the Great Basin Desert of Nevada and Utah, in the Alaskan interior, and in the Wyoming Basin are among the most city-remote, inhabited or habitable land on Earth. The contiguous United States contains wilderness as remote from urban civilization as some parts of the Amazon Basin, measured by travel time rather than straight-line distance. Fact 18. The U.S. state capital furthest from the geographic center of its own state is Hawaii's. Honolulu, the capital of Hawaii, sits on the island of Oahu, which is geographically near the center of the Hawaiian archipelago's main island chain. But the state of Hawaii includes the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, which extend 1,200 miles northwest of Oahu, placing the actual geographic center of the state far northwest of where the capital and most of the population sit. Hawaii's capital is at the southeastern end of a state that extends far to the northwest, creating a capital-to-center displacement larger than most states' entire dimensions. Fact 17. The U.S. buys groceries from a state that was a foreign country within living memory. Hawaii was an independent kingdom until 1893, a republic from 1893 to 1898, a U.S. territory from 1898 to 1959, and became the 50th state on August 21, 1959. People who were born Hawaiian citizens of an independent kingdom were still alive when Hawaii became an American state. The annexation of Hawaii was preceded by a revolution that overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy with the involvement of American sugar interests and U.S. Marines, an involvement that the U.S. Congress formally apologized for in 1993. The 50th state became part of America under circumstances that differ from every other state's path to statehood. Fact 16. Driving north from Detroit takes you into Canada. Detroit sits on the northern bank of the Detroit River, and Windsor, Ontario, Canada sits on the southern bank. The Ambassador Bridge, connecting Detroit to Windsor, runs in a predominantly southward direction from the American side. Driving from Detroit to Windsor on the bridge means driving south into a foreign country, one of the few places in the world where north is the American side and south is the international border. Geography and political intuition point in opposite directions in Detroit, where south is Canada and north is the United States, in a border arrangement that violates the assumption that Canada is always north of the US. Fact 15. The US has a time zone that is in the future relative to itself. The Line Islands of Kiribati, near Howland Island in the Pacific, sit on the American side of the dateline, while some US territories sit on the other side. But within the standard US territorial time zones, the Eastern time zone is 3 hours behind the Pacific time zone on standard time, and the difference can be experienced as being in a different temporal present. When it is midnight and the new year begins in New York, it is 9 p.m. the previous year in Los Angeles. The United States spans enough longitude that its eastern and western edges exist in different calendar days for 3 hours every night. Fact 14. The U.S. has more public land than private land in multiple western states. In Nevada, the federal government owns approximately 84.9% of all land in the state. In Alaska, the federal government owns approximately 61.8%. In Utah, 64.9%. In Idaho, 61.6%. These states have majority or near-majority federal land ownership, meaning that the governments of these states administer and tax a minority of the land within their own borders. Nevada is the most federally owned state by percentage, where the Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, the Department of Defense, and the National Park Service collectively own more of Nevada than Nevada itself controls. Fact 13. The southernmost state capital in the contiguous U.S. is not Miami or any Florida city. Miami is not a state capital. The southernmost state capital in the contiguous U.S. is Austin, Texas, at 30.3 degrees north latitude. If you exclude Hawaii, whose capital Honolulu sits at 21.3 degrees north. Among contiguous U.S. state capitals, the southernmost are Baton Rouge, Louisiana at 30.4 degrees north, Austin, Texas at 30.3 degrees north, and Tallahassee, Florida at 30.4 degrees north, all at approximately the same latitude, which is roughly equivalent to the latitude of Cairo, Egypt, and Shanghai, China. American state capitals at their southernmost reach sit at the same latitude as the northern edge of the tropics in the Eastern Hemisphere. Fact 12. The U.S. contains the world's largest living organism. Pando, a clonal colony of quaking aspen in Fish Lake National Forest in Utah, is a single organism connected by a root system covering 106 acres and estimated to weigh 6 million kilograms, making it the heaviest known organism on Earth. The approximately 47,000 tree trunks visible above ground are genetically identical stems of a single plant whose root system has been expanding and replacing its trunks for an estimated 80,000 years. The largest and heaviest organism on Earth is a forest of trees in Utah that is technically one tree. The quaking aspens of Fish Lake look like a grove and function like a single plant that has been alive since the last ice age. Fact 11. The continental U.S. once had a coastline running through its interior. During the Cretaceous period, approximately 70 million years ago, a shallow inland sea called the Western Interior Seaway split the North American continent from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean, dividing the continent into two land masses. The seaway was at times 1,000 miles wide and 2,500 feet deep. The states of Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and others were completely underwater. The fossils found in these states, shark's teeth in Kansas, mosasaur bones in South Dakota, are the remains of animals that lived in an ocean that occupied the middle of the country 70 million years ago. Fact 10. The oldest rocks in North America are not in the Rockies or the Appalachians. The oldest exposed surface rocks in North America are found in Canada's Northwest Territories, the Acasta gneiss, dated to approximately 4.03 billion years ago. In the United States, some of the oldest exposed rocks are in the Beartooth Mountains of Wyoming and Montana, where exposures of approximately 3.96 billion-year-old gneiss have been dated, and in the Minnesota River Valley, where Morton gneiss, dated to 3.5 billion years, is commercially quarried and sold as decorative stone. Americans walk on and build with stone that formed when the Earth was less than 1 billion years old, and some of that stone is sold in home improvement stores as countertop material. Fact 9. The U.S. has a desert that receives rain from two separate ocean systems. The Sonoran Desert, spanning southern Arizona, southern California, and northwestern Mexico, receives moisture from two entirely separate weather systems. Pacific storms from the west deliver winter rainfall to the western portions. Gulf of Mexico moisture, delivered by the North American monsoon, delivers summer thunderstorms to the eastern portions. The result is a desert that has two rainy seasons in different parts, supporting biological diversity so high that scientists have documented more plant species in the Sonoran Desert than in any comparable dry region in the world. The driest landscapes in America are biologically richer than most of the country's forests because the desert
gets wet from 2 oceans.
Fact 8. There are more languages spoken in one New York City neighborhood than in most countries. The Jackson Heights neighborhood in Queens, New York, has been identified by linguists as the most linguistically diverse urban area on Earth, with over 160 languages spoken within its boundaries. This exceeds the linguistic diversity of most nation-states. India, with 1.4 billion people, has 122 officially recognized languages. Jackson Heights, with approximately 170,000 people in a few square miles of Queens, has documentation of more distinct languages spoken by residents than many mid-sized countries contain. The most geographically compact point of linguistic diversity on Earth is a neighborhood in one American city. Fact 7. The U.S. has territory in every ocean on Earth. American territorial possessions include islands in the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, the Pacific Ocean, and waters adjacent to the Arctic Ocean through Alaska's Arctic coast. The U.S. territories of Guam, American Samoa, the Northern Mariana Islands, and others sit in the Pacific. Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Navassa Island sit in the Atlantic and Caribbean. The Pacific Remote Islands National Monument encompasses several islands across a vast stretch of the Central Pacific. The United States has sovereign territory touching 3 oceans and the Caribbean Sea, more oceanic presence than any other nation except France, whose overseas territories are similarly distributed globally. Fact 6. America's tallest mountain is not Denali by one measurement. Denali in Alaska, at 20,310 feet above sea level, is the tallest mountain in North America and the United States by the standard measurement of elevation above sea level. But Mauna Kea in Hawaii, at 13,796 feet above sea level, rises 33,500 feet from its base on the ocean floor to its summit, making it the tallest mountain on Earth by base-to-summit measurement. The country simultaneously contains the tallest mountain in North America by conventional measurement and the tallest mountain on Earth by an equally valid measurement in 2 states on opposite sides of the Pacific Ocean, which is a geographic fact that the single word tallest is not equipped to handle. Fact 5. The U.S. has a river that flows north through the Great Plains. The Red River of the North flows north from the Minnesota-North Dakota border region into Manitoba, Canada, where it empties into Lake Winnipeg. It is one of the few major rivers in the United States that flows northward, opposite to the direction most Americans imagine rivers flowing. Its northward flow means that spring snowmelt in its southern reaches creates floodwater that travels north toward a river mouth that is still frozen, producing the Red River's famous spring floods. The river that defines most of North Dakota's eastern border flows away from the United States into Canada, northward toward the Arctic watershed, in the opposite direction from the Mississippi that most people assume carries all the Great Plains water south. Fact 4. The contiguous United States has a point that is equidistant from 3 oceans. There is a point in the Rocky Mountains, specifically near the Continental Divide in Montana or Wyoming, depending on the calculation method, that sits equidistant from the Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic Ocean to the north through Hudson Bay. This trifectal equidistance is the hydrological reason that Triple Divide Peak in Glacier National Park sends water to 3 ocean basins. The center of the continent is not simply far from the ocean, it is equidistant from multiple oceans simultaneously, a geographic situation that exists at only a handful of points on Earth where continental scale and ocean distribution align to produce it. Fact 3. The United States has lost land to erosion in living memory. Louisiana loses approximately 25 to 35 square miles of coastal land to erosion, subsidence, and sea level rise every year. Since 1930, Louisiana has lost approximately 2,000 square miles of coastal land, an area larger than Rhode Island that was American territory and is now open Gulf of Mexico. The land does not disappear through catastrophe. It subsides, erodes, and is inundated,
slowly and continuously. The United States is literally smaller than it was in 1930 because Louisiana's coast is smaller, a contraction of national territory happening continuously in slow motion that the political map does not reflect because maps show where the borders are agreed to be rather than where the land actually is.
Fact 2. The contiguous United States spans more longitude than the entire continent of Europe. From Cape Flattery, Washington, at approximately 124.7 degrees west longitude, to West Quoddy Head, Maine, at approximately 66.9 degrees west longitude, the contiguous United States spans approximately 57.8 degrees of longitude. The European continent, from its westernmost point in Portugal at approximately 9.5 degrees west longitude to its easternmost point in the Ural Mountains at approximately 65 degrees east longitude, spans approximately 74.5 degrees total. But the portion of Europe most people mean when they say Europe, from Portugal to Poland, spans approximately 35 degrees of longitude. The contiguous United States is wider longitudinally than most people's mental map of Europe, which feels large and diverse in ways that the United States also is, but is not assumed to be. Fact 1. The United States was a different shape for most of its history than it is now. The contiguous United States reached its current shape only in 1853, 77 years after independence, with the Gadsden Purchase that added the southern strip of Arizona and New Mexico from Mexico. Before that, the country had expanded through the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, the addition of Florida in 1819, the Texas annexation in 1845, the Oregon Treaty in 1846, and the Mexican Cession in 1848. Each addition fundamentally changing the shape of the nation. The United States, as it appears on the standard map, is not the shape the country was for most of its history. It is the final shape of an acquisition process that took 77 years after founding, involved purchases, wars, treaties, and one negotiation with Denmark in 1917, and is still not finished if you count the ongoing discussions about Puerto Rican statehood that would add the 51st state and change the shape again. The map Americans recognize as their country is a recent achievement that took most of American history to produce and is not necessarily finished.